When you put value first, when money's a secondary consideration, you're financially free. So what that means is financial freedom is a state of mind, a perspective. Just as poverty is a perspective, financial freedom is a perspective. Now let me make another distinction, and let me say a couple things. Number one, never allow someone to say it's just semantics. Semantics are everything. Wealth is built through our conversations that we have. Thanks, Ben. It's kind of dangerous to have me here today because last night and the night before I headlined 2 stand-up sets at Wise Guys in Salt Lake. So now I'm supposed to be educating and I don't know the difference sometimes. So we'll just see how that goes. I went to Governor's Honors Academy before any of you were born, 1995. Back then they took, you just look like that is an ancient man up on the stage. She was just like, what? 1995? Were there even cars back then? No. We didn't even have text messaging back then. We had to just communicate by talking to each other. It was ridiculous. Yeah. 1995, yeah, they only took 50 students back then, and I was number 51, but someone dropped out, so they let me in. So I was really lucky, yeah. It was, yeah. Which is a big deal from a kid from Price, Utah. Nobody's willing to admit it, I see. Yeah, so I gotta tell you, it was a life-changing experience for me when I came because I grew up in such a small place, and I would say even kind of small-minded. And then when I came here, like one of the speakers back then was talking about 3D printing. Now that's a normal thing today, but back then I'm like, what? Like it just prints things and then they're real things, not just a piece of paper. And then I heard from this guy, Ren Zafiropoulos, who invented Xerox. I don't know if you guys remember Xerox or have heard about those machines that copy things before we had computers, right? So, and he was talking all about business, and I was like, this is fascinating. And then we got to, take some hikes, play some games. I just met other pretty fascinating people. And here's the craziest part of the story, is the guy that went to SUU that was one of the counselors is now my brother-in-law. And I'm gonna be the best man at his wedding in October, so look at the difference GHA made. I married his little sister who's back there. We've just been married for 20 years. None of you guys are 20 years old, and that's how long I've been married, so imagine that, huh? So, and she went to Southern Utah, which is a cool experience for us, and I brought my 17-year-old son that's taller than any of you guys. So you guys are slackers. I thought this was Governor's Honors Academy. None of you are 6'4", are you? 6'5"? Come on. Get to work. So I've written a bunch of books, but I had this epiphany recently. The reason I became a comedian, and I want to see what you guys think of this. I believe like there are people like you in the world that want to be educated, that want to go out there and do great things, but the majority of the world kind of just wants to be entertained. Most of the world just kind of sits around and they watch TV rather than live life. And so I realized education is helpful, and there's millions of people that want to be educated, but billions of people want to be entertained. And so next year I'm coming out with a kid's book called I Am Money, I Don't Grow on Trees. Because I realized, as much as I think it's cool to write a New York Times bestseller, and he said it was Killing Sacred Cows, which is good that he called it by the right name, because the first time I ever did a podcast, you know what they kept calling that book the whole time? Oh, we have the author of Killing Scared Crows. Like what's that book about? Just being mean to birds? I mean, who's gonna buy that? Like, and the whole time. And at the end of the interview, he says, well, what do you think I should invest in? I'm like, glasses? Literacy? How about a new career? And it's awesome, I've sold a lot of books, but I realize like most people, they buy books and they become decorations, they don't actually read it. And they're not really useful unless you read them. But what I do realize is most people will read a kid's book. And so that's a way to use entertainment to educate people. And more importantly, adults read kid books to the kids, and the adults don't want to admit they don't know much about money, so they can learn about money while I'm teaching kids. And I actually just finished writing a book called Life After Debt, D-E-B-T, Life After Debt. And it's using comedy the whole time to help people heal from debt. And I'm gonna tell you, like, you guys are young, people are gonna try to sell you debt early on. Like when I came to SUU, I got here and there was some really cute girl giving out free t-shirts with a 29% interest rate credit card. I signed up. Turns out that was 29% more interest than she actually had in me. Took you guys a minute to get that one. But you're a smart group. I knew it would come around eventually. But this is the thing is I want you to be careful when it comes to debt. Because what happens is a lot of people get deep into debt because debt means you're going to take care of something later. Who in this room is really good at taking care of things later? You guys are overachievers. Most people don't take care of things later. They're like, when I tell my wife, when she's like, will you take out the garbage? I'm like, I'll take care of it later. She knows that's just a polite way to say no. Nothing's going to happen with that. So be careful because debt signs you up for something that you have to take care of in the future. And you're young. You think life is going to be filled with immediate energy and recovery at all times. Like, who stayed up all night already during this trip? Oh, I just outed some of you. You're like, oops, I wasn't supposed to raise my hand because I have a cure. That's fine. It's fine. I did that a little bit. And then the next day, you're fine. I'm 43. If I stay up all night, I'm asleep for 48 hours. It just happens that you get older and things aren't quite as easy. So what I find a lot of people when they get into debt, what happens is now they limit their career choices. They start to limit what they want to do in life because they feel this burden that they got to take care of something that's following them around. I'd even be careful with student loans. Like, student loans are kind of crazy, okay, first off. Because if you went to get a loan from a bank, like a mortgage, they want to see your credit score. They want you to get an appraisal to say what the home's worth. They want to know how much money you have in your bank account. They want a saliva and blood sample. No, I'm kidding. They don't most of the time want those. But it's hard a lot of times to get a loan, right? Because they want to make sure, can you pay it? But when it comes to a student loan, it's kind of the opposite. The less likely you are to be able to pay it back, the more likely you'll be able to get it. That seems kind of crazy, doesn't it? There's a lot of people that they go, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get a degree in Canadian studies. Guess what? That isn't going to help you in life. Because I just went to Canada. Let me tell you how messed up Canada is. I'm on the flight. This is last week. We're just flying, no masks, everything's fine. And then the pilot came on and he's like, hey, we're entering Canadian airspace. We're going to need everybody to put on their masks. I'm like, oh, that's funny. A pilot that's a comedian. No, they really made us put it on there. So for 3 hours, no mask, but now we're in Canada. COVID only gets you when you cross the border, apparently. But this is like, illogical. So you don't need to study Canada. Find something that, like, what really matters more than anything is that, number one, you find something that you're engaged and interested in. Not what everybody else tells you a good career is, but something that calls to who you are. I believe that every one of you have a soul purpose, S-O-U-L, soul. Like, within you, you have this thing that you were born with, and life becomes about how can you discover that inner voice. The inner voice that I'm talking about is the one that says, what voice is he talking about? See, our inner voice, a lot of times, we get society that tries to tell us what success is and what you're supposed to do. And if you have all these things, like a checkbox that you go, I've got the house, I've got the car, I've got the like whatever it is that you're supposed to be happy. But ultimately, people are not fulfilled and happy if they live a life for someone else other than themselves. Like when everything's about, let me sacrifice because one day, someday, then I can do the things that I want to do. If we believe in one day, someday, then we miss out on the process along the way. And this is critically important. When you know your win in life, and your win is your vision, and a vision is something that's so exciting and compelling that's beyond your current reach. Like a vision is something that you don't have the money, the individual time, or the individual ability to accomplish by yourself. A vision, let me give you examples of vision. See, the Wright brothers, they proclaimed if birds could glide for long periods of time, why can't humans? And they invented flight. That was something that wasn't possible in the moment that they spoke it. But you can speak a vision into existence as long as you're bold enough to consider that vision. But most people get logical about it. They go, well, I don't have, again, the time, the money, or the personal ability. But vision is one of the rarest commodities in the world. It's one of the most rare things that exist. Most people are still stuck in trading time for labor. If I show up and I do the work or I put in the effort, then I get paid, and at the end of the day, I check out. You know, I was talking to my son on the way down, and I'm like, you know what? Like, my dad was a coal miner, my grandfathers were coal miners, and my great-grandfather was a coal miner. My great-grandfather came over from Italy in 1913 from a little place called San Giovanni in Fiore. And this little town we decided to go to in 2018. And I realized why he left it. It was pretty desolate. There wasn't much going on there. So you hear people a lot of times say they're having a hard time putting food on the table. He literally was having a hard time putting food on the table. And so he left his pregnant wife to come over to America with his half-brother and his father, and he didn't speak a word of English. They had to hike through the mountains because southern Italy is very mountain, like it was like winding. It looked almost like we were in a different country than Italy when we were driving through there. It felt like I was in the mountains of Colombia or something, and he hiked for days just to get to this port. And then he got on a ship, not speaking English, to brave the waters with something called honey bread, which is a bread that my great-grandma made that you'd add a little bit of honey to it so it wouldn't spoil, so it wouldn't get mold. It would be so hard, it was like as hard as your head, but you could crack into it and have it sustain. And so he barely makes it. He gets to Ellis Island in November of 1913. They change his last name because they can't understand him when he says Iaquinta. They change it to Iaquinto. So an O and an E instead of an I and an A. And then he gets on a train to go all the way to central Utah because there were some Greeks and Italians that lived there that were making money in coal mines. And he gets there just in time for one of the biggest mine disasters in Utah history that kills 113 miners, and the mine shut down. So now he becomes a goat herd living in a tent for 7 years so he could save up enough money to get his wife, who is the most nervous woman that you've ever met. She defied all laws of science and health. She died at 103, my great-grandma. For 20 years, I never saw her move from one spot on the couch. Don't know how she went to the bathroom. She was always on that spot every time I went to the house. Always. She worried at all times. You had to call her when you got home to let her know that you got home. And by the way, she didn't speak English after living here for 53 years. So I don't, like, she could count to 10. That was like her big trick, right? So he spends 7 years saving up enough money to get a home and get his wife and his daughter, who he meets for the first time when she's 7 years old. Meets her for the first time at 7 years old. Now, let me tell you the impact that had on my family. The impact was they started to believe in a concept I call scarcity. Scarcity is a belief, and if you take an economics course, they promote this, that it says there's a finite or limited amount of resources, and then people compete for those finite resources, which creates what I would call, and what the books would call, a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game means there's one winner and one loser, or a group of winners and a group of losers. And this belief in scarcity is one of the things that creates a detriment where people try to check the boxes of success but never feel fulfilled. Because they think there's not enough to go around, there's a finite pie, so I better get what's mine. And so it's this notion I've got to take it before someone else does. I've got to hold on to what I have. And my family deeply believed in scarcity because when they didn't have enough money, they were separated for 7 years. So imagine the stories that were now told to the kids. So all of a sudden, those kids start believing in scarcity. Like, we better hold on. And so you heard in my bio that my family buried cash in coffee cans in the cellar, and we believe my great aunt buried it in the backyard. I really thought about investing in a metal detector, but then I realized that's theft, and that's kind of a bad thing to do to your family. You know what I'm saying? So we didn't do that. But they were worried about, hey, what if we don't have enough money? And their entire life was governed by this, to the point where my grandfather had 2 sisters, and they were this really old school Italian family, where my grandfather was the only boy, so he got to kind of do whatever he wanted. His sister never got married because her job was to take care of her mom, who lived to 103, so that was quite the job. Never a retirement there, right? And then the other sister had an arranged marriage, but what they did was they pulled their funds together as a family, so anytime someone made money, they put it in the same place, in the coffee cans, and they had a savings account. And my great aunt applied for welfare, and when they were researching to pay her whether she deserved welfare or not, they had $550,000 in the bank. So what I want you to first write down and understand is poverty is a state of mind. First and foremost, it's a perspective. The zero-sum game, scarcity mindset of poverty is a viewpoint that says there's only so much to go around, I've got to get what's mine, and if I don't, I'm going to miss out. And what that has people do is play one of two games. The first game is a game called playing not to lose. Playing not to lose says hold on to what you've got. You've got to scrimp, save, sacrifice, delay, and defer because you never know if there's going to be enough. And that's what my family played, was the play not to lose game. But there's a different game. And this is a different game of scarcity that people in this room are more susceptible to, called playing to win. Playing to win is always about the future, never about the present. It's about being on that treadmill. I got to have more, I've got to be bigger, I've got to do better. And what happens is we've seen this happen in society. When people get stuck in play to win, the best example we have right now, Will Smith. So Will Smith just did an interview before he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars with David Letterman. And David Letterman is interviewing him, and Will Smith has 8 minutes in the interview where he's very honest and he says, no matter how big the movie was, we always felt it should be bigger. No matter how big the opening, I thought it could do better. No matter how many parts I got, it was never enough, because that's play to win. So let me tell you, this is what Will Smith is facing right now. He won the game of the biggest movie star in the world and lost the game of life. No fulfillment, no enjoyment, unable to be present because it was always about more in the future. Hey, I know I'm interrupting, but it's because if you go to garrettgunderson.com/quiz, you can figure out your money persona. When you know your money persona, you'll be able to make better choices when it comes to your finances, understand where you've made mistakes and missteps and what was the psychology behind that, and really improve how you view money and how you work with other people with different money personas. So garrettgunderson.com/quiz, no charge, discover your results, and go ahead and comment and let us know what it was. So let me unveil how there's these money personas, or there's these ways that people operate with money. And there's 4 main personas, and 2 of the personas exist in playing not to lose. The first money persona, nobody likes to be called this, it's how I grew up most of my life and my family lived, is the miser. The miser plays a game in money called preservation. They try to scrimp, save, sacrifice, delay, defer, and budget, like I mentioned. The miser knows where the cheapest gas in town is at all times. They know if they buy something at Costco versus the other grocery store, how much per ounce it is and how much you could save. They are all about the double coupon clipping. They're about, hey, we can miss out on experiences as long as we don't spend money. And they're control freaks because they're worried that someone else will make them spend money. So these are the people that have the first dollar they ever earned, right? So life becomes exhausting because they're playing a finite game called preservation. And here's the worst part about playing that game. Nobody shrinks their way to wealth. Wealth is not a game of how we reduce. Wealth is a game of expansion. And the keys or the methodology or the philosophy of wealth comes down to this. How do you serve more people? How do you solve bigger problems? And how do you deliver more value? Which begs the question, what is value? What is value? Value is perspective. And to understand value, let me break it down into 3 pieces. There's 3 measures of worth when it comes to money, okay? The first one is price. Price is what we pay, it's the price tag. So we're like, cool, that's the price. But the second measure of worth is cost, a little bit harder to measure. How many of you have ever heard of opportunity cost? Right? So opportunity cost is, for me being here, there's an opportunity cost of me not being at my house and what I might be doing there, or speaking at something else, or whatever. Or when I spend money on one thing, the opportunity cost is what else could I have spent that money on? So let me give you an example. There could be things that are really low price but high cost. What if you could fly an airline that says, hey, tickets are only $2? You're like, dude, that's a great deal. They're like, yeah, we don't need mechanics. We don't have to train our pilots. Those are overrated. Who's ready to fly that airline? Low price, high cost, because crashing in an airplane seems like a high cost venture, right? So low price is what we pay, but cost is the economic outcomes. So you can have something be high price and low cost. I deal with a lot of business owners that pay a lot of taxes, and they pay me a lot of money to help them solve that problem, and I'm much more expensive than other tax strategists. But for every dollar they spend on me, I usually save them $5 or $6 more than the person who's cheaper. So I'm higher price, lower cost. Does that make sense? And this is why it's important not to go out in the world as a miser where you know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And yeah, I just quoted a Jay-Z lyric, just so you guys know. Yeah, in the new Drake album. Because I wanted to be cool, but I'm old, so I can't be cool. All right, so the third measure of worth is value. Value is perspective, your personal perspective. It's your sense of enjoyment. It's your sense of fulfillment. Value is different for everyone. Like some people value really nice clothes. Other people are like my kids, they'd rather put on basketball shorts, right? They don't value that the same way that I do. I like super comfy, stretchy jeans or whatever it might be. So other people might value, like, I'm a tall guy, so I value first class. You know, I'm willing to pay a lot extra because I write a lot, and I don't write well like this in coach. And my knees are, you know, I know these are really privileged problems I'm talking about right now, but I still want you guys to feel bad for me. So price is what we pay, cost is the economic impact, and value is the overall feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction. Most people are not financially free because first off, they don't even know what financial freedom is, because financial freedom has become a term based in marketing by financial firms that want you to invest money with them. You're going to learn this over time. But let me define financial freedom like this. You're financially free when money is no longer your primary reason or excuse for doing or not doing something. Let me say that again. Money is no longer the primary reason or excuse for doing or not doing something. When you put value first, when money's a secondary consideration, you're financially free. So what that means is financial freedom is a state of mind, a perspective. Just as poverty is a perspective, financial freedom is a perspective. Now let me make another distinction, and let me say a couple things. Number one, never allow someone to say it's just semantics. Semantics are everything. Wealth is built through our conversations that we have. When you're around people, you're going to notice people in a poverty consciousness spend most of their time complaining with no solution, pointing out the problems, and they get sucked into the news. Like the news is so good at manipulating people's conversations. And there's hot button issues. No matter what side you are on with a few of these issues, the government loves 5 issues that they're going to press the button on all day long to get people distracted from their own lives. Let me tell you what they are. Gun control is going to come up because it's polarizing, and they love to push that button, so people go, oh my gosh, we should fight about this rather than do something of value. Roe versus Wade, here we are, back in the news again, so people can get super fired up about something they're super passionate about and completely disagree rather than see eye to eye about the things that we align with. Right? I don't need to go through all the issues, but you kind of see there's just recurring issues in politics that if we get caught up in the argument of it or being a victim of it, that we stop living our lives of adding value, serving others, and solving problems. We have to be initiating the conversations of our life, not having them initiated by people that get paid for you to click on a link or put your eyeballs on a show that remove you from the reality of adding value in the world. I go as so far to say, I never watch the news to the point where when my parents and in-laws are telling me what's going on in the world, I don't know, because I know what's going on in my neighborhood. I know what's going on in my business. I know what's going on in my life, and because I shut that out, I've written 4 books in the last 2 years, rather than getting in an argument where I'm not changing anyone else's perspective because I'm too busy fighting versus adding value. So the miser is the first money persona stuck in scarcity. Scarcity is poverty consciousness and viewpoint. The second is the conservative. And when I say the word conservative, that's not a political ideology, it's a financial ideology. And the conservative is still playing not to lose, like the miser, but the difference is the miser's likely to put money under their pillowcase and under their bed and in coffee cans or just leave it in savings accounts, where a conservative is thinking more about how do I put this money into retirement plans. Now, let me be on a little tirade here for another 2 minutes about retirement. You guys are bright. You're a big part of the future of this world. And if you go into a career you have to retire from, you've made the wrong choice from the beginning. My dad was a coal miner. You should retire from coal mining. That's a terrible, awful job for the majority of people that work it. But if you can create a life that you don't want to retire from, retirement is a dumb idea. The icons that we look up to in the world never retired, even though they had more money. People are so wealthy today, they're like, what do we spend our money on? I don't know, let's go to space. That's how wealthy they are. They're not retiring. They have a purpose bigger than their bank account. And when your purpose is bigger than your bank account, your life remains great. Retirement is an antiquated notion that came from the industrial age that is still going, why in the world do people need 30 years of days off to finish their life? You only do that if you have a terrible job. If you're doing something that's meaningful, that's adding value, why would you retire from value creation? You're like, well, so I could spend more time with my family. Then spend time with your family along the way. Look, my wife convinced me. The only reason it took convincing is because I was scared about it. But she's like, let's go spend a summer in Italy. Now, at this time, look, I've made a decent amount of money, and no matter how much money I made, I still had scar tissue from my great-grandfather telling my grandfather about you never know if you're going to have enough money. You've got to save every dollar that you've got. Telling my mom that. She's saving all the money that she can. That's trickling down to my life. And even though I'm making more money, I'm still stuck in this miser mindset of you got to hold on to everything you got. You got to scrimp, save, sacrifice. Is it in the budget? So going to Italy was more than just going to another continent. It was shifting a paradigm from scarcity to abundance. And here's what happened. We went for 63 days. My wife and I have been married for 20 years, as I mentioned before. It's the first 63-day period of time where we were together every day. And the good news is she still wanted me around. So that was a good sign. But I wasn't out. She literally just shrugged her shoulders like this when I said that. Thanks, babe. Love you. So what happened, and this, I'm telling you, this was life-changing for me. First off, to break the chains of scarcity and say, I'm not waiting for retirement. I'm going to take many retirements along the way and stay engaged in the world of value creation. But I came back rejuvenated, recharged, and ready to go. There's only so many 4-hour dinners you can have before I get bored, right? That's how Italy dinners are. In America, they're like, get out of here. We got to get the next table and the next tip. In Italy, they're like, please stay the whole evening. You're like, I would like they don't want to bring the tab. Or just continue to eat, which is great, but I was ready to come home. But what happened was, I was addicted to work before we left. And I decided I was going to work 5 half days during the whole 63 days. So for the first 2.5 weeks, I was like an addict coming off of some addiction, I was like, I'm not supposed to work when I'm supposed to do. I wasn't sure what to do. And so I was kind of it was until one night where we said, what are the most epic concerts we'd like to see? Because I would have liked to see Prince before he died. There's other people. So we just went and we booked Elton John in Italy. I'm like, that's going to be a cool concert. And we started to think of these exciting things to do that was away from work. And I started to relax. And what started to happen for me is I could start making decisions that were independent from every action being about, if I make this decision, I make money. And it was just about what gives me quality of life. And that's a question for everyone to ask. What gives you a quality of life? What makes you feel fulfilled? What do you enjoy? And rather than saving that for 30 years down the road, find instances along the way to enjoy that life so you don't wear yourself out, wear yourself down, and get exhausted and want to retire. Look, people that grew up in a different era than us, I don't blame them for wanting to retire. There's tons of jobs that technology will displace that aren't fun jobs for nearly any human. But we're getting into a place where I think the future is going to reward a few things. Number one, creativity. artificial intelligence cannot replace the creativity of a human being, because part of what makes it ingenious with a human being is the errors and the flaws. Some of the best songs we've ever heard, the hooks were an accident. Some of the coolest things about art was the thing that was missing or that was initially a mistake that becomes the landmark piece about that. I call that our quirks. And so if you're gonna, like, why not find something that allows a creative outlet? Because I believe we're all artists, but life and society tries to remove the art from us so that we become laborers. So when I went to Italy, I came back and I was like, how do we recreate Italy in America? And my wife and I sat down and we said, this is what we want our cabin to be. I became a rookie fly fisherman, which was a little bit meditative out on the water. I became an amateur barista because I know a lot of you probably don't drink coffee and you shouldn't, but I went to Italy. I'm like, I'm drinking coffee from here on out. I mean, I'm a heathen. I've got a tattoo, long hair. You don't want to listen to me on that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, great. I'm going to learn how to make an amazing latte. And then I was like, what other things can I do? I'm going to pick up my guitar again. I'm going to start playing my guitar. And I started writing jokes and telling jokes. What happened was I had this renaissance in life where I'm like, I'm going to live the life that most people wait for retirement here today. And I'm still going to work, but I'm going to limit the amount of time I work, and guess what happened? Other people were able to take things off my plate, and now I can make money whether I go into an office or open a computer or not. Because you can make money off your ideas, not just your actions. You can make ideas off your processes, not just your products. You can make money off of more than just labor, but in frameworks that allow other people to thrive. And again, the vision makes the biggest difference. Like for me, my vision is to plant a seed of hope, connection, and expression in the hearts of 1 billion people through entertainment to help restore love to humanity. I feel like we've lost a lot of love in humanity. First off, the love for ourselves, because the world wants you to think what's wrong. How you should look, how you should talk, how you should dress, what things you should have, and if you don't have these, somehow you're not lovable or whatever it might be. And I think it's one of the hardest games in the world is to find ways to love ourselves, because it's so easy to find out, well, here's what I could do better. Like in the past, I'd be like, ooh, if I'm leaner, then I'm going to love myself more. If I keep my hair and it stops going gray, I'm going to love myself more. Or it's like all these external factors. But the reality is, when you can learn to love yourself, there's more love to give to everybody else. And I believe the most powerful force we have in the world is love. And when we can start showing up as love, we start to heal other people, because we can start to see the best in them, not just the worst in them, like society wants us to do in a divisive way. So the conservative is the second persona, and they're about setting money aside so that one day, someday, they can accumulate. And you'll hear that, wealth accumulation. And that's the, I'll be happy when, I'll retire when, 30 years from today, then I can finally enjoy life. And what they do is they miss out on experiences and fun in the name of being conservative with their finances. So it's play not to lose. Now there's two other play to win personas that are still based in poverty consciousness and scarcity. And the one that I've spent most of my life in is called the striver. The striver plays a game called status and thinks they can work harder to make more money, but they'll inevitably burn out. They tell lies like, babe, I'm doing all this for the family. That's why I'm working all the time and not seeing you or the kids. That's the lie of the striver. What we're doing when we're saying those things, we're actually saying, there's something in myself I haven't accepted. There's a void somewhere in my life, and I'm trying to externally validate that by having enough stuff that I seem cool. Like I even drove a Bentley back in the day, which when I took to my hometown of Price, they thought was a weird Chrysler 300, that there was something wrong with it. They didn't think it was that cool. And I remember, I posted a picture on social media, and I was at the Salt Flats with the Bentley, thinking I was cool, and someone said, what a pretentious douche. Yeah, that's what they thought about me. Because I was trying to say, look how cool I am, because I hadn't accepted something in myself. Now, some of you might be car fanatics. I wasn't. So it's fine. If that's your value, value-based spending says you buy things you value. Don't let someone else tell you what you value. But if you don't value it and you're just trying to have status like I was and keep working more so I could show what I built at the expense of my health and my family and the quality of life, you lose the game. And then the final money persona is the high roller. The high roller plays a game called opportunity. The high rollers can be name droppers and one-uppers and narcissists. They might be a lot of fun, but a lot of times they take too much risk and they end up bankrupt. So they could be very dangerous. They always make you feel so good about yourself, but a lot of times they're trying to extract money, and then they lose your money, and their life kind of continues on, but you didn't have control over the outcome of your income. And see, most people invest so terribly because you're going to be told through your life, you know what, you're busy. You're not smart with money, just give me your money, I'll handle it for you. And that comes mostly from salespeople that are separating you from your money, which creates risk. Most people are not investors in this world, they're gamblers. The only place I believe you should gamble is on yourself, on your skill sets, on your ways to add value, on investing in yourself. Roy and Walt Disney, they found some letters that they had written their parents, and during the Great Depression, one of the letters was Roy Disney writing to his parents and saying, it looks like we're headed for hard times. But Walt and I are just going to invest in this studio because we figure if we're going to gamble, it might as well be on ourselves. Disney's still around. Like, why not look at your skill sets, not what you lack, not what you're not good at, and be envious or jealous of that, but instead acknowledge that sole purpose, which is your values, your abilities, and your passions for the highest context of your life. Everyone here has a sole purpose. It's your job to listen to your intuition and remember that purpose. Not let society deafen that out and make too much noise. But instead, I would rather see you have quiet time in nature than read 1,000 books, because then you're just getting everyone else's ideas, and sometimes that's indoctrination, not education. And there's not a lot of programs that'll tell you read less, but here I am saying it today. Because if you don't listen to yourself and you're only listening to someone else, you lose critical skills of choice and knowledge that is within you. And when we think we're lacking something and we've got to chase what everyone else is doing, we lose our voice in who we are. So what in your life can you do right now and in the future that you preserve as a hobby that's just for you? It's not to look cool, it's not to earn money, it's just something where you can lose track of time and be with yourself. If you can continue to have that throughout your adulthood, you're going to have accelerated results in fulfillment, enjoyment, and happiness. See, the world doesn't reward, like, you don't get an Oscar and an Emmy and a New York Times bestseller status for having quality time with your family. That's not what the world's trying to get everybody to do. They're just trying to get you to work harder so they can show everybody in the hamster wheel, if you work hard enough too, you can own a bunch of stuff that begins to own you, and you don't have the life that you want. Like, the best advice I can give you is design a life that you love. You design it. You choose what your win is, and if you have a vision that you don't want to retire from, guess what? You've already won the game, because the win is in the process. The win is in the work. One of my coaches and partners is a guy by the name of Dr. Craig Manning. So Dr. Craig Manning, right now he's working full-time for the Milwaukee Bucks. His main client is Giannis Antetokounmpo, or whatever you say his last name. And while he's worked with him, he's won 2 MVPs and an MVP of the NBA Finals. And what he teaches him is stop being so addicted to the outcome and instead focus on the daily task at hand and enjoy that. And what happens is, with that conscious focus on the task at hand, you increase the likelihood of the outcome. But if people only focus on the outcome, they lose the game. That's like saying, I'll be happy when I win a Super Bowl. I'll be happy when I get the job. And what happens is you get there and you go, oh, I'm not as happy as I thought. Because it's not about the process, it's only about the outcome. And society and the checking of the boxes is about the outcomes instead of the process. Fall in love with your life, design that life you love, and build a process that you enjoy, and then the hard work is worth it. Any questions so far? Yeah.
So I just thought, how should I start? Like, begin working hard to make the money so like or not just grow.
Okay, so the first thing is,
How do I start doing that while still valuing money?
look, there's different phases in life, and like my first business, I was 15 years old. It's called Garrett Gunderson's Car Care, so obviously a brilliant name for a company. But what that did for me was it got me started. And I started to learn about business. So I made air fresheners with the logo. I made floor mats. I started learning how to get pockets of places like a school district that everybody wanted their cars washed. And then I came to SUU and started presenting on that business for competitions, and I won Young Entrepreneur of the Year, which happened to give me skill sets in speaking while I was young. So even though I would never want to detail cars or own a car detailing business, it gave me these additional skills. And the reason I did that as a business is because I was in sports and I didn't want to have a job that would preclude me from playing sports, so I started my own business. And look, you could, business, is Rich Christensen speaking at this? No? Okay. Well, get the book Zigzag Principle or Bootstrap Business. He's someone that's a big, person here at Southern Utah and a big influence in my life. You learn to be really resourceful regardless of resources, and you find ways to create cash flow with what you have right now that engages your skill sets. But I'm telling you, there's a step before that, which is what do you want in life? Who are you? What are you capable of? Get clear about your skill sets that matter and really invest in those, even if it's working with someone else. Like when I started in finance, it was June of 1998. I was 19 years old. And what I did was I remember telling people, I'm like, hey, I'm excited about this. Like, well, you're really young, it's going to be difficult for you. First off, never let someone give you an identity. You give yourself the identity. Anyone that told me, oh, that's going to be difficult, I'm like, you don't understand my advantages of being young. My advantage is at 19 years old, I could pretty much email, well, I don't know if there was email back then. I could call someone. This is sad that there wasn't email back then. But I could call almost anyone, no matter how successful, and because I was 19, they would take my call. Because I'd say, I really want to learn from you. And I'm willing to contribute to your life, but I got to go to New York, I got to go through these financial firms, I got to meet with some of the top people, because they're excited that a 19-year-old wants to learn. I'm here, they didn't pay me to be here, because I'm excited that you guys want to learn and grow, and I realized someone invested in me when I was your age, and it changed my course of my life forever. So whenever someone tells you something's a disadvantage, here I'm in Utah, and yet my comedy manager is Barry Katz. Barry launched Dave Chappelle's career, Jon Stewart's career. We can go down the list. It's Bill Burr, all these amazing comedians. And how did he discover me? Because I got clear about my vision of what I wanted to do. And sure enough, he saw me open for a comedy special and was like, hey, I think what you do is great. So I didn't have to move to LA or New York because that didn't work with my life. Just like being at comedy clubs every night of the week to get 3 minutes on open mic didn't work, so I just hosted Zooms from my house. I invited friends over and I practiced my entire thing there. And then when I filmed the comedy special, I had all these Emmy-winning people from Hollywood showing up to produce for a rookie comedian. Why? Clarity. I knew what I wanted. I invested in those skill sets. I wrote this keynote, one-man show kind of play thing, and then I'm listening to a podcast and they're like, this is the best acting coach in the world. His name's Larry Moss, and they're listening. He coached DiCaprio in 7 movies and all these people, but they mentioned one name of someone I knew. And so I immediately hit that person up. I said, could you introduce me to Larry? He said, yes, and now Larry's my coach. Because that's an investment for me, is to have someone like that. Everyone else is investing in things they don't know, they're diversifying into things they don't understand, and they're just trading time for money. I would just get clear, even if you get paid less, who do you want to learn from? Who do you want to spend time with? Because we all have different forms of capital that most people don't recognize. Financial capital is the obvious one, and people will lie to you and say it takes money to make money. It doesn't take money to make money. The banks don't have any money. They have your money and your parents' money, and they lend it out. It's not their money. So they just take your money for them to make money. What it takes is resourcefulness to make money, and there's 2 precious forms of capital that drives financial capital. The first one is mental capital. That's your knowledge, your wisdom, your insights, your strategies, your tools. Invest in that at this stage of your life, whether it's time or whether it's money. You're going to have mental capital that comes out of this Governor's Honors Academy. The second is your relationship capital. People, networks, organizations, mentors, friends, and family. So you might be one idea or one relationship away from the next level of prosperity. So rather than stay stuck when you're struggling, open up about it. Talk to, who can you go to? Who's a peer? Who's a mentor? Who's an advocate? It's who you're going to spend your time with. A lot of people, when they're struggling, they go to mom, and mom goes, it's not your fault. Well, guess what? It kind of is your fault to a certain degree, because it's your life. And it's not your fault isn't the best advice. The best advice is, where can you take responsibility, and what can you do about it? So all of the unrealized potential you have is in your mental and relationship capital. So what specialized area of mental capital can you specifically address based upon something that you enjoy and love and have accelerated results in because of your capacity? Get to that. Now, maybe there's a bridge where you're doing some work where you're like, this isn't my long-term solution. I was telling my son on the way down, East Carbon dump site opened up when I was like 15 years old, and they had this grand opening where we had to put up all these tents and chairs. It was 104 degrees, and I worked there for 4 days to put all this up. And I don't remember how much I got paid. It definitely wasn't enough. But the real payment was, I'm not going to do that kind of stuff in my life. I'm going to be really clear about what I'm good at. And you know what? The first time I spoke, I made a few people laugh, and I won 3rd place in a competition. It came with $500, and I was like, I was scared so bad to speak. But then at the end, I was like, that felt really good. And so part of it is, if you're willing to challenge yourself, you're going to increase your confidence. Like when I did stand-up, I was so nervous, but I invited 6 rows of my friends to that first set, so I couldn't back out. Palms are sweating. I went up there, but at the end, I felt this. It was so much fun, so exciting. So the process is, find at least one person right now that you can regularly communicate with that brings out the best in you, sees the best in you. I call that a co-creator. So when it comes to comedy, I got this guy Marcus that was runner-up on Last Comic Standing. You guys probably haven't heard of that program because you guys are young. Damn you. But I work with him all the time on my jokes. Or when it comes to writing my books, I work with A.J. Harper, who's an amazing screenwriter and editor. So I've got that co-creation that creates accountability and support and inspiration if I get stuck. And I also know that if I can get it 80% of the way, they can handle the other 20% so I don't get in a perfectionist mode and not do something. Right? So when it came to like having this idea to do a one-man show kind of play so that I could teach money in a more entertaining way, where I'm acting out characters, playing guitar, doing spoken word, because everybody needs more white people rapping in the world. So I called a director. I was a co-creator, because now I've got skin in the game. Now I've shared it with someone else. So the process is what I call the cycle of creation. When you have an idea, who can you share that idea with to make it a concept? Who are the people that go, tell me more, I like that, that's cool, have you thought of this? Then you build a framework. Who are the people that can support you in implementing it, and then you bring it out to the marketplace. Mental and relationship capital move you through that cycle. And ultimately, co-creation for me is the early step after I have the idea. Then the second thing is, when we come up with anything that's extraordinary, it's human nature for our brain to think of all the reasons we don't have time for it, it can't work, or why it's not possible. We don't have, and that's what I call escapism. Escapism is like where people artificially get busy. They've just got so much to do, they don't have time for what's important. So it could be people that say they're too busy, but they're always watching sports, or always playing video games, or always cleaning the house. Whatever it is, there's like escapisms that people have. So you got to address that, because with that time, that's what you're going to invest in your co-creation. Then, as you build momentum, as you have profitability, then you can delegate and have other people offload things that you're not good at so you can accomplish more. And then if you have a compelling enough vision, then you can collaborate. Then you can look at the people that have different capabilities than you. Like I co-create the comedy special by sitting down with Marcus, and we write out the whole set. I'm even co-creating by having 5 Zooms a week where I'm testing all the material because I'm seeing audiences' responses to it. Then I'm delegating, because I'm going, all right, we got to find a location, so my manager is finding the camera crew, he's finding the director, all this kind of stuff. And when we finally get to the collaboration phase, we change the venue to a much better venue, because someone that was the director of photography is like, this will be a better view if we're trying to sell it to Netflix. Then they brought in a lighting guy that won an Emmy with Dancing with the Stars. Then they brought in 8 camera people using all these HD cameras for a guy who has never done a headline. But the thing is, I was crystal clear about what my vision was, and I knew I didn't have to do it alone. I just knew that I had to be committed and bold enough to speak it into existence. So that's where the miracle happens, when you speak it into existence. Now, how do you earn the money along the way? I don't know. I detailed cars. I sold life insurance and mutual funds when I was pretty young. And then I eventually started my own thing that called to me in a profound way. And that's not always easy, and not everybody is built to be an entrepreneur. Some are. Others might be intrapreneurs, where you want to work in an organization where you can add your value because you like that structure and that process. So let's look from a place of abundance and wealth, which is what I would call the producer paradigm. See, scarcity and poverty consciousness is the consumer condition. Look to take more than you give. Zero-sum game. Poverty consciousness, where the producer paradigm is about adding more value in the world than you take from it. It's about innovation and ingenuity. So in the producer paradigm from abundance, the miser flips in abundance when they start thinking about, how do I serve others? How do I solve problems? How do I add value? To the mindful manager. The mindful manager is the same traits, but instead of thinking selfishly and only about yourself, you think about, how can I add value to others? And in that mindset, the mindful manager is a detail-oriented person. They're resourceful. They know how to enhance ideas and reduce waste. So I had this client that his entire job was to go into these companies and find out where they had inefficient systems and fix the systems, and the average savings by hiring him for 100 grand was $990,000, because he was a mindful manager. And he could go in and say, hey, what if we did it this way? He was just masterful at it. Where a lot of times, you got to realize, a lot of visionaries can ask, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And they can state that. But a lot of managers go, how do we do that and when do we do that? So different personalities create different and better results. Most of these like iconic names that we would look and say, here's these people that are billionaires. One of the things you're going to find is they always had an amazing operation person by their side who might not be known, but they might have been the mindful manager, or the flip side of the conservative is the planner. My wife's a planner. She's a stable, thoughtful, and strategic person, right? She's always thinking about, hey, how can we plan for contingencies? How does this work? How do we have capacity to do this? And what is all the research so that we make sure we're moving forward on the right things? That's a planner. And so we make a good team, because I'm not a planner. I'm the creator, which the striver becomes a creator when they're abundance. They lead with innovation and ingenuity. They're artists, they're entrepreneurs. So the creator is going to pave new pathways for value to be given to the world. And instead of the high roller, if they come from the producer paradigm, the high roller becomes a catalyst. The catalysts are visionaries, they're movers and shakers, they're connectors. They think and play big and show us ways we can win together. So when you know what your money persona is, which I think if you go to garrettgunderson.com/quiz, you can find out your money persona for free. And then what you can see is, what would be the shadow persona, the things that would move you into the miser versus the mindful manager, and how can you avoid the traps, and how can you embrace your abundant mindset, right? Or instead of the conservative, you'd be the planner. Instead of the striver, the creator. Instead of the high roller, the catalyst. And then what you do is you find the winning personas that you are not, and that's collaboration, because they bring skill sets that you don't have so you can achieve more. The world is going to tell you competition and isolation, and you'll hit ceilings of complexity and you'll limit your capacity. There's a proverb out there that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, bring others with you. So instead of competition, the game is one of collaboration. And instead of accumulation and checking the boxes of societal success, it's you defining your life, creating your rules, and having a vision that you never want to retire from. Yeah.
Well, on that relationship capital, you said something a couple years ago that had a profound impact on me, and it was about the organizing your relationships in your life, kind of about, you mentioned that you have buddies and you have co-creators.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you could expound on that.
Yeah.
For a second. I think that might be helpful.
Great. So there's three categories of how I look at relationships. The first category is what I call friends. Friends I invite to things, and I say yes to their invitations anytime that I can. Friends are people that support me, that love me, that encourage me, and I do business with friends. Like, that's fine. I don't, stop that from happening. But then the second category are buddies. There's people that are my buddies because I don't share my vision because they would think that's weird. I just go hunting with them. Or I just talk about what it was like in high school, But I'm still buddies. It's just that I'm not going to spend a ton of time with buddies. I'm going to spend more time with friends where I can be in that collaboration phase. But buddies are great. It's just I'm going to spend more time with friends. But then the last category, what I call friendlies. Friendlies are people that I'm not going to argue with. I'm not going to try to change. But these are the people who are addicted to poverty consciousness. These are the people that if I'm having a tough time, they're happy about that. And I used to think, well, I've got to convince them otherwise. But when you argue with the fool, you become the fool. So I'm like, cool. I'll let them do whatever. If they invite me to something, I politely say no. And I never invite them to anything. I just limit my time with them. Let me give an example. I used to speak at this event. My wife used to be like, why are you speaking at this event? Every time you come home, you're exhausted. Because I'd speak, then I'd sit at these mentor tables. And the first time I ever spoke, the guy comes out and he goes, oh, our next speaker. He owns all the skyscrapers in Utah. At the time, I owned 45% of a 3-story building. I don't think you can call that a skyscraper. I definitely don't own any building downtown, but that's what he said. And he goes, and everyone that's a faculty member here is his client. I'd never even spoke to Tony Robbins, who was speaking at that event. I've never even said hi to him. And apparently, he's saying they're all my clients. So I come out and I go, I don't know who just got introduced. I look forward to meeting them or being them one day. Like, I didn't know how to handle it. So after I spoke, I went and I said, you cannot do that. None of that was true. That's not my bio. Don't say it. And he's like, I'm sorry. So he invites me back, and I come back another time. And this time, I'm from Utah, and I kind of look like Jesus if he was old, right? So he just figures, well, this guy must be Mormon. So in his mind, he doesn't even understand Mormonism because first off, he goes, last time I was in Utah, I kneeled down and prayed with Garrett and his wife. And I'm like, what? I don't remember. Like, first off, I'm Catholic. We do kneel down, but you think I'm... So he's just lying, right? Like thinking, oh, I'm going to use this spiritual angle. So I start complaining to my wife, and she goes, why don't you just not go back? And I didn't go back, and it all stopped. It was just remove myself from the situation. Don't get caught up in the drama. Don't get caught up in a negative relationship that they don't want to change. So why am I going to spend all my energy trying to change them when there's plenty of people that want to be, I could add value for, that I could spend time with, that's enjoyable, that's uplifting. So that's kind of those categories when it comes to relationship capital. Now, oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is completely unrelated. If you're gonna, do you have more answer? Like, do you have more of an answer to that question?
You want more on that? Okay, yeah, we can go to the next question.
Okay. How can you find your soul purpose if you can't figure out what you're really interested in?
Right, so here's the thing. Soul purpose is going to happen in the quiet moments, not the noisy world. It's when there's a blank slate, like a void, that you're going to have the discovery of this. And I believe soul purpose is something you remember. So this isn't about reading more and doing more. It's about time that you're quiet with yourself. Whether that's in meditation, whether that's in prayer, whether that's hiking, and whether that's in nature. Like, what are those places that you can find it? For me, I have this river behind my cabin. When I'm walking along that, like, I'm going to tell you guys a stupid story for a minute to prove this point. Really stupid. So my wife, I was running late to pick up my son for jiu-jitsu. Bad traffic. So she's like, I'll take him to jiu-jitsu. Just finish the chicken on the stove. Okay. She takes him to jiu-jitsu. I go eat some chicken. What she meant was finish cooking the chicken on the stove. But I just ate raw chicken. Not totally raw. It was definitely pink. I'm like, babe, I couldn't finish all the chicken. I just got full. She's like, what do you mean couldn't finish all the chicken? I'm like, I mean, I just couldn't. It was too much to eat. She goes, finish cooking the chicken. Oh. So I went to Google and I was like, what happens when you eat raw chicken? And it sounded terrifying. So, in a very dramatic fashion, I'm like, it's like the last rites of my family. I'm like, everybody come around, let's watch E.T., because I don't know, I'm just not feeling well. And my wife's like, she's like, what don't you feel? I'm like, I got a fever. She goes, that's not salmonella condition. I'm like, I know, but I really feel like it's a fever. And I'm like, my body aches. I'm losing my voice. Could you get me some water? She's like, you are so dramatic. So I didn't have salmonella, but turns out I had COVID. So she's like, you go up to the cabin. We don't want to have COVID. So I spend a week up at the cabin, right? And I got to tell you, like, it's been a big year for me since last June. I sold a business that I started in 1998. I sold the house we lived in for 9 years, and we moved into a new house. I started a comedy career and filmed a comedy special. I did a 15-city comedy tour as a rookie comedian. I don't know. There was just so much change that I didn't have enough time to like catch up to be like, is this what I want? And when I was up at the cabin by myself, I got to go, well, what's my win? I'm like, you know what? I want to do another tour, but I want to space it out and only do 1 city a month versus 6 cities, which is overwhelming. I was like, I want to spend more time writing, and I actually finished writing a book while I was up there because I had all this time, because I just got clear, and I just took time in silence to think. And I just don't think we do enough of that. And it's okay to struggle with it, to be confused about it. And I kind of look at, when I was younger, I just think that you go through like, treat it like an amusement park. I was like, okay, that's not good. But then when I came to Governor's Honors Academy, man, every time an entrepreneur spoke, I was like, that's fascinating. I went and talked to him afterwards. I have a new book coming out this month called Disrupting Sacred Cows, where I talk about Governor's Honors Academy and Rand Zafiropoulos and the lesson he taught me at 16 years old that's still carrying into my life at 43. I know you're surprised and thought I was 30, but no, I'm 43. So it's not like someone can look at you and tell you what it is. And if it were just completely easy, then what are we doing here? Because I feel like this whole process of being on earth is learning and discovering. And half of it is, when you start early, you have less to unlearn. Some people get stuck in their ways and they never see their brilliance. And part of it is, we as human beings have a tendency to discount what we're best at and think everybody else is good at it because we are. So don't discount your abilities. So find that quiet time, find that hobby. I know that sounds like a weird thing, but I've just seen enough people find it in that, not in the doing. It's in who you are and the being. Yeah. Well, I was like, who expected that voice to come out? I'm like, deeper than mine. Damn, dude. Congratulations.
So what helps you balance it and helps you not spend too much time?
Dude, you should act like you're 40 years old on the phone. You're just going to crush business. I'm just giving you great, helpful advice right now. Yeah, just like it. He's asking about how do I balance things. First off, I realize that balance is not what I'm looking for exactly. Again, remember, semantics matter. I'm looking for depth and harmony. Depth means I'm deliberately choosing what I'm doing in my life, and I'm focused and present on what that is. Harmony is knowing that there's moments where I'm going to be like writing a comedy special from November to April. I'm like walking every day, trying to rehearse, I'm doing things, but again, I did it from 5 to 6 p.m. instead of 8 p.m., missing out on my family time. I defined my rules and stuck to those rules. So I have all these rules, like my wife and I always have a trip on the books we look forward to, because you get to experience the trip before you even go on it. We're going to Spain in November, we're already excited about it, just talked about it this week. So that's part of like harmony, because I've selected that, I'm taking that time off. You know, I don't have my computer ever go into my bedroom. That computer stays in the office because after 6 p.m., how often am I on the computer after 6 p.m.? Never. See, I have heard she would not lie to you, that's the thing. She would be glad to throw me right under the bus. But I just have these structures, like, and what happens is when you have those rules and you stick to them, you get strategic. What I find is like, if someone's been in a career and then they decide to take a vacation, they start finding ways to delegate that they never did before because they need to get things done before they go. Otherwise, it carries over into the vacation and spoils the vacation. So I have really good, strict rules of what days I work, what days I don't work. And I'm careful with my deadlines more now than ever because too short of deadlines can stifle creativity, and create unnecessary strain and stress because it's of a striver mode versus what really has to happen. Like, I've been working on a book for 5.5 years. Actually, when I came and spoke here years ago, I was like, I need to get home and work on this book. I still don't have that book done, but it's okay, because I decided to stop creating these deadlines and be like, there's more I have to discover as I write this book. So I started writing other things and working on it in a way that was in harmony with who I was, not in artificial deadlines that would make a publisher happy. I mean, it's not like I'm a New York Times bestseller with the publisher, so I just go back to them and say, this is what's going to work for me. Does that work for you? And as long as you communicate that, you can then create that structure. But realize most people will live by the expectations you set, and if you don't set the expectations, they create their own. So I'm just really clear. If you want to do business with me, this is how I work. If that doesn't work for you, that's okay. We don't have to do business together. There's no rule or law that says I have to do business with everybody that likes me or wants to do business with me. Here, then here.
So like, how do you stay consistent with investing in yourself, like not losing yourself and like?
Say that a little bit louder.
How do you stay consistent in investing in yourself and like not losing yourself?
What was the last words? Losing yourself in what?
Like getting sucked into playing.
Okay. How do you avoid getting sucked into playing to win? Well, I find like having structure is super helpful for this. So one structure I like to use is something by Dan Sullivan called the Entrepreneurial time system. And what I do is on Mondays is my business meeting days. I just cram as many business meetings into Monday as possible, so I'm just through with the planning for the week. Those are called buffer days. Think of it like for an athlete, it would be a practice day versus a game day. Then I have on Tuesdays is my creative day, where I know I can write for the most of that day. I'm not going to be distracted with a bunch of meetings, right? And again, I'm going to be done by a certain time of the day. So those are focus days, where I'm doing the things that are the highest and best use of my time that are combined with the skills that matter most for me, which is either writing, speaking, performing, right? And then Wednesdays is another buffer day where it's like I do a rehearsal every Wednesday with my one-man show. So I just create the structure. But what's really important is I start every morning with what I call a morning tuning. So I have a thing called the 5-minute journal, and I write what are 3 things I'm grateful for, what are 3 intentions for the day, and what's the declaration of who I am to reinforce that throughout the day. And then what were the 3 best things that happened the day before, and what's the number 1 lesson I had from the day before. So I'm writing in that. Then I'm going to pick up my guitar and play and practice my guitar a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of a workout in the morning. And then maybe make a coffee and have a little coffee with my wife so we could just sit and talk and that kind of stuff. Anything else I do in the morning? And then I have a little productivity planner where if it's on a day I'm writing or creating, I prioritize what my projects are and how much time, and I do 25-minute blocks, so I'm always taking breaks and not getting too stuck and lowering my creativity. So I do that, and then I have trips that are planned that I'm now taking those trips. And I'm focused more on my vision than on too many goals. Never more than 5 goals in a quarter, because as soon as that happens, I'm going to get stuck in play to win. 3 to 5 is better, because it's my number 1 skill set I've been working on is saying no to opportunities and yes to quality of life. The more you develop your skill sets, the more people are going to want you to bring those skill sets into the world, but sometimes that's going to infringe upon your quality of life. And so it's hard to say no to things that feel like they could be very profitable. Like I just did a hike yesterday. This guy's building what's probably going to be tens of millions of dollars from one business. I introduced him to the concept, and he's like, let's do this together. And I said, I love that you're thinking of me. I'm really clear that my job right now is to entertain and perform and write books that are entertaining. To plant a seed to 1 billion people, working with a few thousand people one-on-one is not in the cards for me. So that's what you have to get good at, is saying no. Because the difference between successful people and highly successful people is successful people are addicted to yes. Highly successful people say no, 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 and only say yes to the things totally aligned with their sole purpose. So they give up money all the time, but then more money comes later because they've reserved their time and the quality of that time for the most impactful things.
You mentioned making connections with mentors and seeking out people to learn from. So say you get in a room with someone that you want to learn from. Do you have any tips for networking?
Yeah. So when I was at SUU, I was a business senator, which I think was helpful because I now got connected to people like professors. But this guy, Steve Harrop, came to become a professor after managing $5 billion in municipal bond funds. He was #1 in every category for municipal bonds. And I'm in his class, and one day he's like, yeah, I kind of got out of shape the last few years of work. I'd like to get back in shape again. I was like, cool, what do you like to do? He's like, racquetball. I'm like, I'm your new racquetball partner. We'd play racquetball, then we'd sit down and have lunch in the Charwan Smith Center here, and I'd just quiz him on stuff, and he helped me navigate my early financial career and completely changed my life. So that was someone, I never paid him $1. He actually became a client of mine, and you know, we kept in touch and did even fundraisers for the school. I donated a lab in his name here. Like, that was someone that was instrumental, and I simply asked. I simply showed up, and I got to know, like, what were they looking for? Right now, I have more mentors now, so you'd think as you get older, you learn more, but the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn. And the more complicated I start to recognize we are as human beings. And now that I'm older, one of the things I realize is most of the things that makes an adult misbehave in a way that doesn't make sense happened to them before they were 12 years old. Most of the pain, trauma, or instances that happen when we're kids, before our brain is fully functioning, shapes how we behave as adults, because we say as kids, I never want to have this feeling again, and then we never allow ourselves to get into a place that feels like that, even if it's not even the same thing. Example, 3 years old, I get hit by a car, and my mom's pregnant with my little sister, sees me get hit by a car, and I remember being in the hospital, and all of a sudden my dad shows up in his coal mining gear, my grandparents show up, they're frantic, and I'm like, man, if I'm not perfect, I cause pain for my family. So now I'm addicted to trying being perfect, which is impossible, and my wife will tell you that I'm very far from perfect, but we don't need her to speak up right now. So basically, I have this belief system that until I let go of will hamper my ability to be a writer, because perfectionism is the enemy to any art. Because now we're stuck in scarcity versus in creation. What was your question again?
Like, you get in a room with someone,
Yeah.
any tips for,
So and when I got older, I just could afford to pay for it. And a lot of people aren't willing to pay for it. Like Larry Moss, my acting coach, who's drastically impacted things I never expected, $500 an hour, but it's $500 well spent. I get it. If I'm 19 years old, could I afford that? No. When I'm 19, I could get Steve and Cindy Gilbert, who I met at Governor's Honors Academy, to have a conversation with me. I could go talk to professors and say, like, who do you know in the community that I should, I could go and interview people. I had a little red memo pad. So when you're young, money isn't as meaningful to get access to this. When you're older, it might be a little bit. But I just say, who do you want to learn from? And I'm telling you, like, I go direct to the source now at this stage of my life. But I'm an author, and authors are fickle, man. All you got to do is read their book and tell them good things from it, and they're going to like you. It's just, they just put themselves out there. Now, if you're asking, you don't know who they are, it's a totally different thing. But most people just don't ask. So who do you want to meet? Start telling people. Those are people that connect you to them, Yeah.
We have one more question. Sorry.
And then we're done? Okay.
What questions do you ask when you're talking to somebody in all their questions? Like, what kind of questions?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, because I'm gonna start doing this interview series on YouTube, and I was thinking about the questions I would ask them. And the question I'd now ask them, because sometimes people see, here's someone really accomplished, but I want to ask them, tell me a time when you were super resourceful. Like, how did you get through tough times? Or what was it like when you had no clue what you were going to do, and how did you discover that path to get there? Or what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago? Because then you really start to hear a lot of their inner thinking. But for me, it depends on what outcomes I'm looking for, what things I'm dealing with in the moment. Because the better questions you ask, the better results you're going to have. Questions are the access to so much gold, but most people don't ask enough questions. So the more it applies to the things that you're dealing with, and look, maybe that person doesn't know the answer, but they know someone who does. So as you have good questions, I would write them down and just remember those questions that give you those access points. you know? I mean, you look at someone that's a brilliant interviewer. I mean, Joe Rogan's one of the most influential person on the planet. He's a comedian, but the reason he is because he's inquisitive and curious and can ask questions that almost nobody asks. Or even like, you know, I hear a lot of people that ask the same questions in sports, but Dan Patrick asks totally different questions when he has a guest. So I like listening to like, what are they looking for? What kind of conversations are they doing versus just the standard question that everybody gets asked that you could just read inside of their book. So the more personal and specific the question is, the more beneficial it's going to be to you. All right. And is that it?
Just one more after that, sorry.
Okay.
When you're outlining a book, do you outline or do you just start writing? What's your writing process? And also,
Yeah.
do you ever encounter writer's block? And do you believe that you can work through that, or do you need to like wait to be inspired?
Okay, so in writing, how do I go about writing? The book that I just finished, Life After Debt, I actually went to a workshop with a guy that had 3 New York Times bestsellers on the list at the same time, which it's such a rarefied air. And I just spent 2.5 days outlining the book. It was a 3.5-day workshop. I was outlined after 2.5 days, so I took off. But I was like, I like having that accountability and that time to sit down. Then I went through that outline, and I was like, what are the main topic points within this chapter? What are the stories that support that? And this is what I look at. I go, anytime I'm writing the outline, I go through a 20-minute process. The first minute is, what do I think this title is? I get 1 minute. And by timing myself, it engages the left and right brain in the right way to just force it out. And most of the time, that's not the title. The only time I use that title is my lowest selling book of all time because it was a bad title. Budgeting Sucks. That was a bad title. It was a placeholder, and I didn't think of something better. But that's what I came up with in a minute. Then I go, for 3 minutes, what are the top topics for each chapter? So I just try to brainstorm, and then I take 4 minutes to reorganize which order that chapter would be. Then I do 7 minutes where I go, what are the 4 subtopics for each chapter that I want to get across? Then I take another 7 minutes to reorganize and refine that, and that's my outlining process. Then when that's done, I go, there's 4 types of readers. How do I write to the 4 types of readers within this topic? The way I use that is through the Myers-Briggs, which a lot of people don't love Myers-Briggs, but for my process, it works really well. There's 4 types of people in the Myers-Briggs. The anti-competitive. So when I write to the competitive, I give them a visual up front with the synopsis of the chapter, and I give them a bullet point at the end because they want to bottom line it. Then there's the humanist. The humanist wants stories. So I'm like, what stories am I going to add to this chapter that are going to reinforce and what's going on, or which ones do I need to research and get from the outside? Then I'm looking for the SJ. That's the methodical. They want all the details and the facts and statistics, and then there's the spontaneous person that wants to know about the author. So now I'm going through that in all 4 chapters, or in all of the bullet points of all the different chapters, and then once that's outlined, then I just start writing sloppily. I write sloppy. I don't worry about punctuation. I don't worry about grammar. I don't worry about word choice. I'm just trying to get words on the paper, and then I can come back and refine it. That's my writing process. Find your own in that process, you know. And writer's block, there's 2 things that I don't really run into writer's block often. What I've run into is I've now written too much, and I need to reduce this, and what am I going to keep? So I do take time off when I come back to the reduction process, because when I first write it, I wrote this book that's around the 4 personas. It's not out yet. I've been working on it for 5.5 years, 80,000 words. So I'm like, I'm going to take this down to 55,000 words. And I like too much of it, so I just recorded an audiobook. Now I'm cutting it down because I'm like, cool, I captured it on an audiobook that I may or may not release, that I could give to people along the way, and now I can just chop it down to what is the essence of this book. But when I write, I never go, I'll save that for another book. I put everything I can into that book. And then those things might go into a different book, or they might not go anywhere. But when people try to limit themselves, they hit writer's block. And when they try to perfectionist, they hit writer's block. Sloppily write and get into flow. And if you get stuck, find a co-creator and then speak it out. And record that, transcribe it, and then take what's good. If you like the energy of the drop-in, where you actually got to see me in a conversation where I was interviewed, or I was actually at a venue where I was speaking to a group of people, there's a certain energy that comes from that. So if you'd like to see another segment where we pulled it from a speech right here in the comfort of wherever you're watching this from, well, click this next video now.